So welcome everybody. Today we're going to be doing a Omen agent masterclass. In the past, I've done a lot of these videos before for other agents like Reyna, Raze, Yoru, Sova, and some other more popular agents. And Omen is definitely one of the most popular controllers out there, and we've been seeing him being played a ton, especially in VCT Toronto right now. And one of the best controllers in the game, period. So I don't think we've done like a specific controller guide yet. And so hopefully as we just dive deeper into how to play Omen at a high level, it also teaches you guys something about just what it means to be a good controller player as well. Because even if you don't play Omen, you're still going to learn a lot based on how you can play around his smokes, based on what you can expect from him, and how you can make plays off of him as well. So let's get started. So this is the question that we want to solve today through this lesson. Number one, how does Omen actually control space and outplay opponents? When should Omen be aggressive versus be a more supportive player on the team? And how do we also counter enemy reactions to Omen plays? Because, you know, we all love Flex Ninja and Opium Omen. They make some crazy plays, right? But how do we pull stuff off like that and not just TP and die instantly? So there are some things that we're gonna dive into. And I've also pulled up the game literally from earlier today that was streamed from VC Toronto. And we're gonna break down how Omen's also being played at the highest level, okay? So quick overview, right? Omen is a controller and he's not just a passive support. I think a lot of people in the lower ranks that typically play the controller role like to play controller because, you know, they say, okay, well, I don't really feel the most comfortable going in first. I like being able to use my utility to support my team and help them out. But I would say that Omen is arguably one of the most aggressive controllers out there because he has his blind, which is one of the best blinds in the game. He also has 2 teleports, which can create a lot of space and create a lot of confusion for the enemy team if used correctly, which actually allows you to take a lot of really aggressive fights. And the fact that his smokes also is hollowed out means that there's a lot of outplay potential and a lot of risks that you can take because you can take a lot of close range fights, you can play mind games and get out if you need to with your teleports. Right? So there's a lot of room for creativity with this agent. And if you're just trying to sit back and help your team, Omen's probably not going to be the best pick for you or even the best fit because there's plenty of other agents that could do a better job of just sitting back and helping your team. But with Omen, after you've used all your utility, you've thrown down your smokes, you've used your flashes, you can use your TP, make space, and take fights. That's really what you want to do on Omen. And he's really popular too because he has a pretty low skill floor, which means he's very easy to pick up initially. Very straightforward kit. Nothing like too complicated having to learn a lot of bunch of lineups, but he also has a very high skill ceiling because, like I told you, there's a lot of room for creativity. And I'm going to show you guys what the pros are doing to make some creative plays with Omen. I know it can feel overwhelming to try and figure out the more nuanced aspects of Valorant on your own, but not with us. My team of a dozen Radiant and VCT coaches can help you identify your biggest bottlenecks and help you climb fast. We did that with thousands of students before, so to show you how confident we are, I can promise you'll gain at least 500 RR in 10 weeks, or we'll give you your money back. We have packages that start as little as less than $1 a day, all the way up to our flagship 10-week Immortal Roadmap program. So if you're serious about ranking up, click the link down below to book a free call where we'll check your tracker and discuss your goals together to see if we'd be a good fit. And when it comes to making creative plays as Omen, there's always this component of risk versus reward. In Valorant, the way that I like to see this game at a high level, if we just simplify it, right? It's like a game of rock, paper, scissors. If an opponent team chooses to make a play, let's say they're gonna rush a site, then we can just represent that as the opponent throwing out rock, right? Then we want to throw out paper. So what's the counterplay to a rush like that? It could be saving utility towards the actual choke points of the sites, or there's also different options where you can actually dump utility back and try to fight for early space, right? There's a lot of different ways to counter them, but depending on the ways in which you're trying to counter the opponents, if they're just dumping utility at the start of the round and you're dumping utility back, that's like fighting rock with rock. Or you can try to catch them with paper, like as they're all coming onto the site. But depending on whether you are throwing out rock, right, where you're trying to fight them back with utility, or you're trying to passively, it also means that the opponent team can adapt and change up how they're also trying to take that space or the site. So for instance, they were dumping a lot of utility at the start, but they also choose to maybe actually sit back the next round and wait until you guys throw out rock first and waste all your utility, and then they decide to fight back, or they decide to go to a different side of the map. And so even when it comes to Valorant, even when it comes to playing Omen in this case, you want to know what are the most viable options and plays that you can make depending on each scenario, and see whether or not, by weighing the risk versus reward, if this play is actually worth going for. Because like I said, there's a lot of room for creativity. There's a lot of room for not just passive plays, but also very aggressive plays on Omen. I think it's fitting that we also do this lesson on Omen because, like I said, he's the most picked agent in VCT Toronto right now. As we can see, his most picked maps are on Sunset and Lotus, followed up by Icebox Split, and then Ascent, Haven, Pearl. So something that you guys might notice, well, actually, let me ask you guys a question, right? Like, why do you think that Omen is picked a lot on maps like Sunset and Lotus, as opposed to other maps like Haven and Pearl? I'm just reading the chat. Yeah, better paranoia lines. Yep, very true. More corners to TP. Smoke range, that's a good point. Layout of the map, easy to find one-ways. All right, awesome. I think these are all really great answers. So one thing that someone mentioned was even just like the paranoia lines, right? So let's actually pull up Valorplant here and show you guys what this looks like, right? So some of the most played maps right now for Omen, Sunset, Lotus. I mean, if we look at a map like Lotus, right, whether you're playing on the defending side or the attacking side, there's a lot of opportunity for you to fight for space. So whether it's from Link, and even for the attack side, right, you can try to like get into tree and blind all of backside. You can also have a lot of creative freedom when it comes to the TPs. You can TP across rubble to make space. You can TP across even like rubble. You can even fight for C and TP across if you want, or fake the TP if you'd like. Even just playing towards B allows you to put a lot of one-way smokes in general to apply a lot of pressure. And he just makes fighting for space really easy on a map like Lotus, where it's very important for you to take early space. When we go to Sunset as well, right, there's a lot of really good lines for Omen to also blind, right? Like he blinds the entirety of A main. And even when we are site executing onto B, let's say, he can easily blind the entire side of the site like this. So depending on where the entry wants to go, he can choose to basically blind everywhere. And also when it comes to the different points of elevation and boxes, there's a lot of different places that he can not only put one ways, but he could also, you know, TP on top of. Lots and lots of places, right? So even if someone does, let's say, smoke off a market like this, he can still stand above, and there's like the famous TENS clip where people are coming out and he just shoots them all from below screen, right? Some of the best maps for Omen will be where he's going to be able to get the most value out of his paranoia lines. But also keep in mind that the maps like Haven and Pearl, where it's also very, very big, you'll also notice that Omen isn't played as often just because it really restricts him to where he can really play, because the rotations are going to be a bit longer too. In order for you to actually rotate from mid all the way towards like A and B, and actually use your paranoia in choke points that are going to be useful for your team to play off of, it's a little bit more difficult, right? It's not that you can't pull him off on these maps, and you totally could, especially in ranked, right? But that's typically the reason why we don't see Omen being played as often on maps like Haven and Pearl. But I think it is very interesting to note how, even though Haven and Pearl are really big maps, and Haven is a 3-site map, Pearl is a 2-site map, but the layout is very similar to actually Haven, if you noticed. But with Lotus, even though it's a 3-site map, I think there's just a lot of spaces on Lotus particularly that Omen really shines. And so I'm going to be showing you guys that in the VCT footage that I've prepared for you guys. All right, let's quickly go over his utility. So for his teleport, the advantages of his teleport is that you can create a lot of creative angles to pick fights from. So elevation, you can use the audio to also trick people into thinking that you might have moved and repositioned. So you can either choose to actually teleport or choose to teleport beneath you. You know, when Vine was around in the rotation pool, right? You can also fake TP. You can also TP behind opponents when they're using abilities like drones or dogs, right? There's a lot of different ways to use his TP, or even just taking space, right? You can use it almost like a jet dash, where after you've thrown down all your utility, you can just go in there and get timing advantages because of how fast you can get up to certain places. So let's say like you guys end up taking Haven on A site, right? And you guys killed the Heaven player. Well, the opponents are probably still rotating from spawn and from B site, so you can even teleport up Heaven and get some cool timings. Same thing on like Ascent. Let's say you guys take A site and you guys kill the Heaven player and you guys take it really fast. Again, you can TP up there, take some space and get some timing advantages. So the only cons is that sometimes it can be predictable, especially when you're using it within audio range. And so that's something you have to be very mindful of and careful of. Or Paranoia, pros, very large AoE. The blind lasts a really long time. It deafens people and you can't turn from the flash, right? But the only downside is that there is a visual indicator that the flash is coming your way. It's 400 credits, very expensive. And they actually nerfed it a bit where it's actually a little slower now, right? You can't change the speed of the flash anymore depending on how fast you're running. This is a very, very common mistake that I see even in like Immortal lobbies where I see players just fill Omen and they haven't really played him before, or they're not used to playing him that often. Please, because his flash is slower now, wait until your flash actually travels to where you want to blind the opponents first before you peek. I've seen so many people across a ton of VODs that I've done, and even in my own games in Immortal and Radiant lobbies, where people just peek before the enemies are actually blinded. Okay, so just be mindful of that with the flash. Okay, and let's also talk about the smokes. Okay, so nice thing is that it refreshes pretty fast and it's a hollow smoke. So you can think of this as a pro and con, but typically I like playing around hollow smokes, especially if I'm the one that can throw them down, because it gives me a lot more control over how I want to play around the smoke. And for the opponents that are trying to enter through the smoke, it's always going to be a gamble for them, right? So as long as you are mindful of what utility the opponents can use to clear out your smokes, you can play them fairly safely and get a lot of gunfight advantages in that way. Okay, the cons to it: limited range, right? It has less range than like Brim smokes, for instance. And same thing with like Viper, you know, you can place a wall down, you can place an orb down, and you can use it anywhere on the map, but that's not the case with Omen. Also, the cast time is a pretty big con, where there's a lot of other controllers where you just have to click, press the map where you want to place a smoke, and you just place it down. Can't do that as Omen, right? But those are some of the cons that you have to play around. And his ult, the pros, it's relatively low cost. You can pick up the spike if needed. There's a lot of potential for getting important info, but again, it's very situational, because if you try to gamble too much, right? Again, going back to the topic of risk versus reward, right? If you're taking too big of a risk with your TP, you know, it could really backfire. It can be risky, right? So I would highly recommend that if you are trying to go for a TP, let's say like in their spawn or something like that, that you're doing it with absolute confidence, making sure that based on previous trends in the rounds, based on the previous patterns that you've noticed on how the opponents rotate and where their setups are, that you're making an informed decision on where you're teleporting to. That's also very, very important. So those are his piece of utility. And these are just some, I mean, we call it one-trick secrets. Some of these aren't such big secrets, but these are just some nuanced aspects to his utility that you should know about with Omen. So with his teleport, the actual initial audio of when you teleport, you can actually hear from pretty far away, up to 35 meters. But the reform, like when you're actually getting out of your TP, people can hear it within 10 meters. There's two different audio cues. That's something that you guys need to pay attention to and keep in mind. This means that if you're trying to fake teleport, right? There's no point in doing a fake teleport if the opponents are really close to you, right? 10 meters away. Because as you come out of the TP, they'll still be able to hear you 10 meters away, right? But if you're in a mid-range gunfight and you're trying to, even like 15 meters, right? They won't be able to hear you when you're coming out. So that's a good time to actually use your TP for fake teleporting. And then you're blind. It can also double as a detect, because just like Reyna blind, where it's a near sight, same thing with Omen, there's going to be a visual indicator over the player's head that you blind. So sometimes what's nice is you can actually see that indicator above boxes. So that can be a good piece of information that you can take advantage of. And again, like I said, you can't change the speed of the flash anymore. So you have to be mindful of that. And for your smokes, you can press Alt to change the form of which you are throwing down your smokes, but most of the time I think people just cast in the realm form because it's usually easier to see everything. But I know some people do like some weird lineups using the other form. And then there's a lot of very easy one-ways that are very impactful on Omen that I will also show you guys in a bit. So make sure to learn as many one-ways as possible because they can be used very often with how quickly Omen's smokes refresh. So they can be very impactful. And also you can smoke a tad bit faster while running because just like how you have to drag your smokes to where you want to actually place it, if you're also running in the same direction as where you're trying to place the smoke, you can place it down a little bit faster than if you were just standing still. And lastly, for his ult, you can gather info with your ult. You just have to be careful where you TP because sometimes if it just gets shot instantly, you're not going to get much info out of it. But you can, you know, like how there's like Flex Ninja, Open and Omen that use the ult in a very creative way where they'll use it on a really weird part of the site, draw attention to it in like a 1v1 or 1v2 situation, and then get out of the TP to actually shoot players in the back when they're not looking at them again. And then the teleport, right, can be used for fast rotations or flanks. All right, last slide basically here. Let's talk about when we need to play aggressively on Omen versus when we want to play more supportively. Have you guys like ever been in situations where you're playing Omen or any controller really, you throw down your smokes and your teammates just don't even go in, right? A lot of you guys might have experienced that. This is a very common complaint that I hear from players. So there's a couple of reasons why that happens. The first one that I could think of right off the top of my head is the timing of your smokes. The timing of your smokes need to be right around the time where your teammates are actually at the choke point, ready to get onto the site. When I see a lot of low elo FODs of people playing controller, oftentimes the user smokes way too early or way too late, and that usually kills confidence for the rest of your team to actually go in. Because what's going through their mind is, wait, the smokes are not down yet, or wait, like we smoked way too early. And so by the time we take site and the enemy's already rotated onto it, the smokes are gonna fade or the smokes are not gonna be ready and it's gonna be way too hard to hit the site. That's one reason, okay? The other reason is, yeah, like people are just really afraid for no reason. They just want to bait. And even if you're using all the utility in the world to support them, sometimes they just won't listen and that happens too. So what do you do in both of those scenarios, okay? So the first scenario that I talked about, you can literally tell your teammates the exact timing in which your smokes are about to drop and tell them, hey, like heaven is smoked, CT smoked, you guys can go in now. I'm gonna flash, I'm flashing back site. That gives your team a lot more confidence to actually try to go in the site. But let's say second scenario, you do all that and they still don't listen to you. This is where you essentially become the first entry, okay? I know it's a little bit dumb. In an ideal world, you're usually gonna be the second or third entry. If you have only one duelist on the team, hopefully you have like a double initiator comp where they can use a lot of utility to help your first entry get onto site. Then you're probably gonna be actually the second or third entry to actually teleport and follow up with your duelist to take space on the site. And this is after you've thrown out your smoke. At that point, you're taking on a very aggressive role to actually try to trade out your first entry. Because the first entry that's going in, usually gonna be like a Jet, Raze, someone that can make space, maybe even like Neon. Most of your teammates that have their utility out to use it on the site are not going to be able to run up as fast as you will be able to with your TP. That's one thing that you need to keep note of. So that would be like taking a very aggressive role. And sometimes you do have to take on the aggressive role for maps like Lotus, where he's played very often, because a lot of times your team won't have the utility to actually be able to cross over to rubble and take this space. So sometimes just you even like teleporting here will create extra lanes that defenders will now have to worry about fighting from. It's not a single choke point anymore. They have to worry about these two angles now, okay? Or technically three right here, 1, 2, 3. So that is a situation where you want to be aggressive, okay? And on the flip side, okay, you can play a very supportive role if you notice that your team is actually able to take the site very easily, even without you. Like a double duelist comp, you have a good initiator, you know, they're taking the site really well. Then at that point, yes, like you can use your flashes to set up your teammates, or actually you can even hold on to your flashes and stay alive so that you can actually use the blind for post plant. That's also very helpful. And just the fact that you staying alive, even like playing off of site, means that you'll have your smokes recharging and will also help delay the defenders from retaking the site. So now let's actually get into the fun stuff and watch some VODs of pro players. All right. So this is a game earlier, PRX versus G2. You can see how both teams are actually running Omen Viper. And let's see how, in this example, Valen actually holds down the site against PRX.
Sheriff in mid, looking for an opportunity, but Jonah P not going to give it to him. Valen, Paranoia at the ready.
He's ready to send it. Don't worry, we got you guys here with us. We'll get the game audio back. It's all good. Valen still.
All right. What did you guys notice about that clip? He was patient. He was waiting for footsteps. He smoked main, waited for the blind. The flash stopped the push. Passive and aggressive balance. Cool. Okay. Remember how I said there's a lot of one ways that you can do on Omen. Did you guys notice this smoke at all? It's great because instead of just smoking this front choke point like a lot of people do, which isn't necessarily bad, right? It's not terrible because when people are coming out, they can get shot from both heaven and basically anywhere else on site. But with this type of smoke, it actually allows you to take even a deeper info line. And before people can actually cross into the smoke and come out this way to the right of the smoke, because it acts like a one-way, you can actually see them go in the smoke. So that means you can actually be prepared for someone to swing out on the right side. And in this case, you're actually able to see that the person is just on the left and shoot them back. Okay. So yeah, it's placed on the box. It's placed on the box right here. And so this is really amazing, because before, if you were to just smoke the main choke point, the only downside to it is people can come up from both the left side and the right side. But here, you're eliminating that risk because you can see if someone crossed into the smoke and they're going to come out from the right, or you can just shoot them when they're on the left side trying to fight back at you. And right here, back sight right here, there's actually an extra staircase. So yeah, that extra elevation will also allow you to see their feet before they can. So this is a cool example of how there's a very good line for the Paranoia where he blinded this entire line as people are coming out, and it allows him to also get a lot of early info and space into B main. Something that I also noticed when it comes to, so notice here in even like pistol round, Valen will actually hold onto the flash. And notice how Valen still has his flash up. So I think because of what they were able to do here in the pistol round, so notice how Forsaken here uses this early smoke actually B main. And this allows him to actually deny attackers from taking space B main without, using utility. Because now attackers that are pushing have to worry about any defender playing aggressively here. And on the flip side, right here, this is also very important. This mill smoke right here is very good actually, because if you can take control over vents, then it actually pressures defenders to guess whether or not they're going to rehit and actually go through vents and split A, or attackers can also come out and actually split B. And I guess G2 like to go mid, and so PRX had this counterplay where they just put all 5 people mid. And so as soon as Trent hears that, they're just going to speed up and hit A. Okay. But here's also something that you guys need to pay attention to if you're playing Omen. You always want to smoke Heaven in this case first, then CT. When it comes to other sites, like let's say Ascent, and you're trying to hit A site, you always want to smoke door first instead of Heaven. Do you guys know the reasoning for that? Enemies pop from there first usually. Okay, so here's the reasoning. Let's actually go towards, let's go Ascent. One person said it's because the enemies see you first from Heaven first when you peek. That is true. But then if that's the actual reasoning, why am I saying that you should smoke door first here instead of Heaven on A as well? It's because, think about it, if your team is coming out onto site, there's two different, there's Heaven to worry about, but there's also door. The first few people that are coming out, they're most likely going to be holding Heaven, and then they're probably going to be looking at other parts of the site. And so if you smoke this door first, then it allows people to actually hold Heaven. Like, you don't technically need to smoke Heaven as long as there's also more people coming out behind you also holding Heaven, right? I mean, granted, this is gonna get smoked, right? But as you come out, most people are gonna be holding this first anyways, right? You're already looking in that direction. Same thing on split. You're already looking in the direction of screens. You're looking in the direction of CT. So your teammates behind you will be able to help you out. And also when you're doing this smoke on A, just make sure that You smoke a little deeper here. I would probably do it even deeper than this, because you don't want to give space for enemy defenders to actually like come out, get a pick, and then run away. You don't want that. You don't want people to play around this smoke and get out. You want to be able to punish them as soon as they peek. Okay.
Doors open. G2
And that actually is a Viper smoke. The plants in the open.
Flanks to come through here for paper racks. HL's not going to be able to find too much damage. Just going to barrel their way down through elbow. Something in behind one is leaving them to get out. But Madeline Johnson responding in kind. Patman feeling one back to life. Flushed out. Now it's all down to Patman. Top of the spike. The swing. Trent is good for the headshot. G2.
That was really good, right? You guys have any questions on Omen? There's just some examples. I could show a lot more examples too, but I want to know what you guys want to see and answer whatever remaining questions you guys have. So one question was like, why would you not smoke off ramps? You totally could, but it's probably more value if you use a smoke like a jet smoke, or maybe even like a cipher cage to actually help you guys cross towards site if possible, because then you'll have both your smokes that last the longest to use it in the most important choke points. Yeah, the idea is like you don't for beans, yeah, like when you go in, you don't have to focus as much on door, because like that's like the first crossfire you have to worry about, like the first 90-degree crossfire you have to worry about. So if you can smoke that off first, like that's really good. For instance, when people are coming out on split, most people are, you know, looking here or looking here, and so if you can actually smoke off heaven, you're eliminating at least one angle to worry about for the people that are coming in first. So then the people that are coming in from the back can then be holding the smoke. One important thing that I do really want to mention, as Omen, you actually have so much stall potential than you might think. One of the ways, right, is just like through his one ways. People will have to like use some utility to be able to push through this one way. But something you can also do is, if people are just kind of rushing through A main really fast, you only have like one or two people, let's say, holding A main, then it might not be worth it to actually use this one way right away. But you can also throw a smoke like this that allows you to kind of like play around the smoke. And if people are actually doing like a split, right? I think there's a clip of Boaster that we can put on the YouTube video, but basically he uses a smoke like this to actually isolate some of the fights from people coming in from cat, right? He'll do this, isolate some fights, and take fights like that. Or you can also throw a side smoke like this that allows anyone else on the defender side to have more space to actually be playing inside these smokes. Okay, so that's one really important concept. Same thing over on B, right? Like let's say you're playing towards A, but your teammates are like, shit, they're going fast B. Well, by the time, let's say you throw this smoke, right? And by the time it actually travels there and places, it's already way too late. The opponents are already going to be out on site. So instead of actually smoking main, it might be better to actually throw like a side smoke for your team to then play around. Because now this backside player can play around the smoke like this. They can also play inside of it, right? I'd probably do it like this. Yeah, and they nerfed a lot of like these one ways you can do. Like this one used to be really good. So for some of these positions, you gotta, yeah, wow, even, okay, that works, right? So you can hold CT like this, but you won't be able to do the one like up here. And actually, this brings me to one other, I guess, advanced thing you can do on Omen is you can create like instantaneous one ways. So by throwing it up in the air and letting it slowly fall, you can also try to take fights like as people are going into the smoke. Trying to think if there's anything else that I'm missing. And of course you can blind someone and then TP behind them. But make sure not to TP too close to them, or else they might be able to see you because they're nearsighted. Okay, so one question, if I'm on the strong side with 3 defenders, rifle on both teams, should I still be smoking the choke point off, or should I let the team enter? Wouldn't it be better to let the enemy enter rather than have them rotate and fight our weak side? Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's a great point. So that's, again, being adaptable, right? Like if you do have 3 players towards A, then maybe it's a good idea to not try to like force this fight with the one way, but you can try to just smoke it off and deny information that you guys have, you know, 3 players on the site. Right? And if you're Omen, you don't have to use your other abilities to make it obvious that you're also playing towards A. Like you can just show 2 people or 1 person, and then as they're coming out, you can throw a blind and take a fight with your teammates. Okay, another question. Should you throw a smoke right as barrier drops so that you can get the cooldown recharging? Doesn't matter which side. I think it's situational, especially on the defender side. You saw like how PRX's Forsaken uses the early smoke a lot to deny early space. So that's something that you can do as Omen. I tend to do that a lot, just using it right off the bat to get some space and get some info. But if enemies are just playing slow in general, it might not be that worth to just use it right away, especially if like, you know, they've just been 4 or 5 man rushing everything. There's no point in just doing a really early smoke. You'd rather just save it for the actual choke point and save one more smoke for sight. And another good smoke, if you are like retaking on A, is like a smoke like this, because now you can isolate more fights and not worry about like A main. You don't have to worry about smoking A main off. And then there's like a bunch of other like bases you have to worry about. Like you come out and there's like a bajillion angles still, right? So you can throw this smoke, clear dice, you know, isolate the fights there. You can isolate a lot more fights this way. And using the smoke also smokes off hell, right? Like anyone that like is trying to see if like you TP'd up onto Gen, like can't see it. So we can throw a blind. Oops, TP up there. And, you know, try to get some cheeky kills. So get creative with it. I highly recommend that you just watch more VODs of how other pros are using their smokes, TPs, flashes in creative ways and experiment and see what works best for you. Which Omen player is good to watch for improving? I think Boaster is great. We've seen a lot of really good creative and practical uses of Omen. But honestly, like if you're following VCT right now, there's a lot there's a lot you can learn just from watching some of these games. Because Omen especially is picked very often right now, right? There's gonna be a lot of stuff you can pick up on. Like pay attention to, yeah, Bang is a great one. Valen, yeah, Forsaken. You know, they're also all really great Omen players right now. Why do you think Omen has a low to mid win rate in ranked? I think people don't really know how to play him in a selfish way. Like I said, there are times when you need to be playing quite aggressively on Omen, but people don't tend to do that in ranked, especially in lower ranks. People just think, okay, I just have to throw my smokes down, throw my flash, and hope my team wins me the round. But there's still a lot that you could be doing with your kit and making plays that could be the reason why. Question, how can you decide when to be aggressive and when to be passive / support in the middle of the round, right? This is again about being adaptable. If the enemies are fighting you with a lot of force, right? A lot of force over on A, well then it's probably best to actually stay alive and try to like help your team during the retake, right? And even during the retake, you can smoke this off. Maybe you can blind like Hell and Gen and allow your team to actually come out and take these fights. Or maybe you can even like, oh, I like this actually, because you can blind all of Gen and Hell. So just make sure that you kind of aim it at the ground as to not like blind your teammates that are above heaven. You know, you get the idea, right? Like you just stay alive, use your util to support your team. Kind of come out this way and take fights. You know, smoke this off again for the retake. But then if you want to switch up being more aggressive, it could be that the enemy team has been playing very slow and they've been pretty passive. Well, then maybe like you can be a little bit more aggressive and like get into wine because they're not using a lot of like early utility. And if they do come, you kill them, you throw a smoke and you TP out. Or what's probably safer is like you get a kill, insta blind, and then TP out. Like these are just some examples, but you can do this, you can figure things out like for every map that you play on. Alrighty guys, so I think we will wrap it up here. The next season of our program, the Immortal Remap program, is actually starting in literally next Monday. So the next 10-week cohort is starting on Monday. So if you are interested, go to irp.gg, go to that link. You can book a free call, fill out the form there, and it'll basically tell you which option of coaching would be the best fit for you. A representative from our team will also be able to reach out and ask you some more questions to see how we could better assist you guys. Okay, go check that out if you haven't done so already. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.